simultaneously, I'm reading a book called The Power of Positive Thinking.
Yeah.
So all of these good things started happening in my life. That's when the modeling agency came in. That's when I was attracting all these celebrities that wanted to like be in my sphere. And I'm like, yo, why is all this stuff happening? But I couldn't associate that with books that I was reading. I was just like, yeah, I'm really lucky. I pray every day. I'm meditating. But all of this was coming from the book. So this was an unawareness. You can't change what you're not aware of.
Give me your backstory and kind of tell me, start from the beginning or wherever you want to start.
If I was to start from the beginning, we'd need probably a whole day summit. But I will tell you this, little points. I did not come from an environment that I would wish on my worst enemies. I've experienced a lot of things. A man tried to kill me when I was 4 years old and tried to put me in the community dryer. Someone saved my life. When I was 7, I almost got drowned by these three teens that were like drowning kids in the neighborhood, and I didn't ever thought I was going to be one of them. My father was murdered when I was 12 years old.
What? Drowning kids in the neighborhood, like were the kids dying or were they
Yes.
just
Yes. So I had
What?
heard this. I heard this, and then you would like hear things in you know where I grew up, Missouri City, but you never think those type of things are going to happen to you. So I'm playing baseball in the cul-de-sac at my friend Derek Duncan's house, and some guys that were my cousin's friends that I knew of. I didn't know them well, but they were just way older, like 8 years older, and I just remember they were like, oh, there's some trout in the bayou. Ain't no damn trout in the bayou, but I didn't know. I was 7. And so it's trout in the bayou. So I'm leaving the baseball game. And I remember clearly, Derek said, don't go, don't go. He didn't know. Nobody knew what was about to happen. But he was just mad because we're in the middle of a baseball game and I just leave. And so I leave the cul-de-sac. And I remember running down there because the bayou was right next. It was on the next street. And I'm looking, there's like the trout are in there. And I was like, I don't see the trout. They're like, you got to look closer. As soon as they said, look closer, what I now know is my intuition said, these are the people that's been killing the kids and I'm about to die. So they throw me in the bayou. At this time, you know, I've done triathlons and half Ironmans and taught myself. I mean, I basically was taught how to swim. This time I couldn't swim at all. They throw me in the bayou. I get flipped upside down because there was these giant whirlpools there. So I get flipped upside down, and it was about to there was 3 tunnels. It's about to suck me in the tunnel. And then I end up, because I couldn't swim, I ended up just letting go. My hand falls into the water, and I'm about to be sucked into the tunnel. If you get sucked into the tunnel, you're gonna die. And I'm like, literally, my life is over. My life is over. Somebody reached through the water that you couldn't see while I was underwater, grabbed my forearm, pulled me up just enough for me to grab the side of the tunnel. And I pulled and I pulled and I pulled through the current and I pulled. And then when I looked up, I saw nobody. But my life, it was whatever it's, you know, it's in the frame of which I look at life. God just pulled his hand and boom, because when I looked up, there was nobody. And I just always have that in the back of my mind. And that was a pivotal moment in my story because at that moment, I stopped trusting people. Anybody who would say something, I was like, let me look into this. I don't know, because it was that moment that I broke trust with people who were older than me. Between 4 and 7, I stopped trusting people.
Wow, that's a lot of trauma.
A lot of trauma.
Wow. So you're 7 years old and you've got these, how old are these kids that threw you in the bayou?
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They had to be somewhere around 17, 18. I just remember they 2 of them had mustaches. So these were older people. And
Yeah.
I'd heard kids drowning. These kids died. These dogs are getting drowned. But you never think things like that are going to happen to you. And it tried to happen to me, and my life was saved.
Did you ever see these kids again? Did you?
No.
That was it.
And what I wished would have happened, I wished the people who were around me would have made more of a fight, would put up more of a fight for seeing who did this and why they did this and things like that. And I don't know what my mom was going through at that time, or I didn't feel like anybody had my back. So I kind of just went with it. So I got used to, as I went throughout my life, not expecting somebody to have my back. So I always had to figure it out for myself.
Wow. And do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have an older brother, Anthony, who's 4 years older.
And was he around at when you were 4 to 7 years old? Was
Yeah,
Anthony around?
Anthony was always around. He actually beat the person who tried to put me in the who did put me in the dryer when I was 4 years old. He actually beat that person up.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's good. So you did have, at least had one person that had your back.
Yeah. So I didn't know what that was at the age of 4.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was conscious of what having my back was,
Mm-hmm.
it was during that time I wish somebody would have like fought for me, like
Yeah.
really had my back. I didn't feel that. It was just kind of like you kind of just go through life.
Growing up in Missouri sounds rough.
Missouri City.
Missouri City.
Yeah. You know what? It was a nice neighborhood with a bunch of bad kids.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to just go further, I was just in and out of trouble, didn't know how to focus. My mom was always working. At that time, my brother was too cool to hang out with me. So my mom raised me, but like there was a part of me that raised a lot of myself. And I sought out community. And the only type of community that wanted to hang out with a bad kid were other bad kids and or other outcasts. And during that time, I was in and out of juvenile, in and out of trouble, being grounded all the time, getting kicked out of school. And when I was 12 years old, 2 men had murdered my father. My father didn't live with us. So when my dad died, I remember saying, half of me died. And that's
did you grow up was your father around
No, my parents separated when I was 4.
Okay. Okay.
And yeah, my dad lived in South Park, Texas, which it's gentrified now, but it was one of the worst neighborhoods that you can actually live in. And so my dad lived there, and I'd go visit him like every other week. It was my week to go, and I remembered that for some reason I didn't go, and that was the week that he got murdered. After my dad was killed, and they beat him up and they left him there to die, and it was just like, man, in a pool of blood. That's when I went on a rampage. You thought I was bad before? I didn't care about anything. I didn't care about school. I didn't care about my family. I didn't care about my grades. So all of that was trauma stored in my nervous system, and I never did anything with. So take that beginning. Now I'm in and out of jail. Now I'm smuggling drugs in and out of countries. I got busted for 6.2 kilos of heroin. And back in 2002, I got sentenced to 12 years in a French prison. And then I got out in 2.5 years. So that was a whole thing that fit the pattern of the domestication of the way in which I grew up.
Man, that's, you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, as Jim Rohn says. And it's really hard to turn into a different person, which you've done, obviously. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about your story and how you transformed, because like you said earlier, people that are doing good things don't want to hang out with a kid that's in and out of jail.
No.
People that, like the people that you want to be like, that's why it's so hard to transform. Even if somebody wants to change their life, I say, I want to change. You want to change your life, but you're in and out of prison. The people that are doing the things that you want to do don't want to hang out with you. They want nothing to do with you, as a matter of fact.
Absolutely.
So it's the path of least resistance is just to hang out with the people that are doing the same stuff that you were doing.
Absolutely. Yep.
And it's really, really hard. And that's why one of the reasons why I believe it's so hard to get clean and sober as well, because before someone gets clean and sober, their whole life revolves around drinking and doing drugs and the addictive and alcoholic behavior, the lying, cheating, and stealing that goes along with with that. So trying to get clean and sober, it's like new friends, new hobbies, new interests. They learn how to exercise, they learn how to pray, they learn how to meditate. Like everything has to change. That's the only way they have a chance. But the people that have what they want don't want what they have and don't want to hang out with them. So it's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
It's super.
I'm sorry, what was that?
No, I'm saying it's super hard. It's like there's a 1%, then there's the 1% of the 1%.
Yeah,
I'm the 1% of the 1% of the 1% who do not make it
exactly.
that that.
Like it's almost impossible to transform that way. So 1% of 1% of 1%.
Yeah.
Exactly. Most people don't get clean and sober. It's a very small percentage of people that are able to get clean and sober. And it's like, I think the statistics are, less than 10% of people make it to a year. If you make it to a year, you have a 67% chance of making it to 5 years. And if you make it to 5 years, you've got an 85% chance of making it for life. The reason being, I believe, because the only way you're able to make it to 5 years is because you've got new friends, new hobbies, new interests, new habits, like everything has changed. So it's much easier to stay on that path as opposed to transformation. The transformation part's a hard part. So, okay, so I think you left off at the prison, your little time and in prison in France. Okay, so
My little time, my little 2.5 years.
Yeah. How old were you?
20 is right after Kylea was born. So I was 22. So I went in there at 22, came out at 25.
Okay. When did you realize that you wanted to change your life?
I always wanted to. I just didn't know how. I always knew I was supposed to be on TV, on the big stage, do big things in life. But I'm like, how are these people doing this? And ever so often somebody would present me a book, which I thought was the stupidest thing in the world because I didn't read books and I didn't understand the power of actually learning because I cheated my way through high school. And it wasn't until, because everything just came by accidental purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say when I was 18 years old, before I went to prison, this fashion show director, because I used to do modeling, I used to do runway with LA models. Fashion show director named Shannon Davidson gave me a book for my 18th birthday.
Wait, how did you end up doing fashion shows in LA? Because that seems like it's even if the company that you're hanging out with are doing bad things, it still seems like a step in the right direction, a step away from Missouri City and the worst part of Texas.
Yeah, because we're kind of jumping around because I didn't go to prison until then. So at 18, somebody told me I should model. And so I just went to go for an audition and I got rejected and I didn't like getting rejected. So I went to another modeling agency and I got rejected maybe 9 times. And then finally I got picked up by Wilhelmina. And then I was with Runway with LA Models.
What's Wilhelmina?
Wilhelmina is one of the top modeling agencies in the world.
Okay.
Yeah, and so is LA Models. But I was with LA Models for Runway, and I was with Wilhelmina for print and commercial. And so when I joined that, I was reading this book. So let me backtrack. Shannon Davidson gave me a book called The Power of Positive Thinking by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. So I'm reading and reading and reading and reading and reading. It's the first book I've ever read from cover to cover, something about it. And I wasn't even reading it because it was a personal growth book. I was reading it because I was a special education student with a learning disability, and I had issues with speaking. I had a speech impediment, and my youth thought like this. And I was in the slow classes. But I was so, when people would use big words and they would speak fast and they would articulate really well, I would clam up in a shell. And one day I got so frustrated that I took it out on the book. So I went inside of this book. This is Joe Polish's book. I went inside the Power of Positive Thinking and I started over enunciating. I was reading like this. Understanding this can go a long way when it comes to building rapport with, and I was just elongating my words. By the time, I didn't know what was going to happen, but I was just frustrated, and something told me to do that. By the time I was done reading that book, I was talking like I'm talking right now, which is a way I'd never heard myself. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Simultaneously, I'm reading a book called The Power of Positive Thinking.
Yeah.
So all of these good things started happening in my life. That's when the modeling agency came in. That's when I was attracting all these celebrities that wanted to like be in my sphere. And I'm like, yo, why is all this stuff happening? But I couldn't associate that with books that I was reading. And I was just like, yeah, I'm really lucky. I pray every day. I'm meditating. But all of this was coming from the book.
Right.
So this was an unawareness. You can't change what you're not aware of. So I'm getting these results. I'm modeling for L'Oreal, Destiny's Child, jumping video. I'm on Old Navy, Tommy Hilfiger. I'm on these commercials. All this stuff is happening. I'm in the height of my career. I stopped reading the book. My ego, my pride, I knew I was the shit. People were telling me how good I was looking, and I was letting those words feed into my psyche, and I stopped reading the book.
To get a free copy of the 12-step guide that I created for you, click on the link in the description below.
I didn't know that leaders are learners and that you should keep reading. So when I stopped reading, then the weeds of my past, the weeds came and overtook my mental garden and brought me right back into the state I was before I started reading, which was negative, cynical, gossipy, prideful, all those things. And just as fast as I got it, I lost it. I'm chasing a girl in Europe, and all of a sudden, I find my way, even while having billboards and music videos, but no money was coming in because they wasn't paying on the spot.
Yeah.
I find my way doing a job for quick cash, and that ended up doing some smuggling drugs from one country to another. I did that route 7 times. They paid me 4,000 pounds every time I did the route. And each pound at that time was 2.3 US dollars. So it was almost $9,000 7 times within 2 months. I never saw that fast cash. It was like Bitcoin before Bitcoin was even here.
Right.
So that, and on the 8th time, I got caught. 6.2 kilos of heroin, the most anti-drug person you will ever meet, never had a sip of alcohol, not even until this day, that was busted for drugs, that was associated with the mafia, who I was working for was working for someone else who was working for the big person, and I became the person that took the rap for it all because I wasn't going to snitch on that and have all of that threaten my family. So I took it, and I was on the front page of the newspapers as the member of the American Connection. It was so wild. I'm like, I had it all, and I lost it all because of my selfishness.
You were working the front lines. That was like the most risky position. And how did you feel about that personally, that you were smuggling drugs from, across the border?
Here's the thing. When you focus on something so much, it blocks you and blinds you from everything else. It's like when your president that you vote for can do no wrong, and they've done a lot of wrong, you'll like almost excuse the actual wrong things. Be like, no, I'm voting all this color. Everybody on here is all doing right. And I'm like, yo, this is the stupidest thing that you can do without actually understanding. It's like blind choosing. So I did the same thing with, okay, I'm just going to drive this car because no one ever said what it was. I just knew that it was doing something bad.
Yeah. You knew, but you didn't want to ask any questions.
And all I was doing was focused on the money. So I was blindly following the money, not thinking about the consequence, not thinking about my actions of what I was doing. I didn't think about any of that stuff till I got caught. And I was like, what the fuck?
You were just thinking about the upside. You weren't thinking about the downside. Like Dr. Alan Barnard says, you want to do things that have high upside with little to no downside, little to no risk. What you were doing was obviously risk, and the consequences of the risk were pretty big, pretty massive. But the one thing that I think of is you stopped reading the power of positive thinking. You stopped on that path, and it's just like fitness, spiritual fitness, positive thinking. It's like any kind of fitness. If you stop going to the gym, if you stop working out, if I stop working out, if I stop running, biking, if I stop doing yoga, if I stop doing all the things that I'm going to lose it. Like people think that, oh, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to get in shape, and then once I'm in shape for the rest of my life. No, that's not I mean, everybody knows that's the stupidest thing. That doesn't happen. You're not physically fit for the rest of your life. You have to continue. And if you don't continue, then you end up back where you were. And that's what happens.
Listen, that is because I now know people treat change like it's a diet and not a lifestyle.
Right.
And so I just kind of went back to the same behaviors that I was doing before. Well, life is not happening to you, it's responding to you. And without me knowing that, so my life, and I was living a bigger life, but then I went back to doing the same things that I did before while trying to maintain all of this stuff that was going on. I'm on covers, magazines, like commercials, music videos. All of a sudden, I get greedy and I stop reading, and pride and ego, and next thing you know, I'm in prison. Wait, what? It made sense to nobody. They're like, Garrain? What? Because they didn't know the dark. They didn't know the dark part of me, the dark side of me. And everybody has it. Everybody has something. And that part of me, I allowed to get the best of me. So therefore, it was almost like a universal order needed to stop me on my tracks before it got even worse. So here I am in prison with billboards in Times Square. What am I doing? What did I do? I just had a daughter. I have a daughter that's 21. I have a daughter that's 1. Kylea was just born. So I'm just having a daughter. Billboards, music videos, commercials out. I'm in magazines. Now I'm in prison. So I'm like, what am I doing? That was the first time I thought about the consequences. When I found out what was in those Congo drums, I'm like 6.2 kilos of heroin. What was I thinking? And I'm in prison, and all of this is going on.
What was prison like in France? What part of France were you in?
I was in Lille, Lille.
Mm-hmm.
And
where's that relative to like Paris?
4 hours. I mean, it's 4 hours away because I got caught at a border, and I was four hours away of the Champs-Élysées. I was 4 hours away, and I was in 2 different prisons: Longness prison, and Lille. And what was it like?
Well, first off, before we get there, which country were you trying to get into?
I was traveling from the UK. No, I was traveling because all the routes that I did 7 other times was from the UK on the ferry to Rotterdam.
Okay.
This time they wanted me to come into France, and then you go from France and then get to the border, the UK, the border that's the UK that gets you into the UK. So I drove from France. So it was in that long drive. Once I got to the border, they didn't bring me into the UK border because I couldn't get into the UK. It was in where the border of France and UK meet.
Okay, and why did they stop you? Why were you not able to get through?
Well, the theory is the 7 times that I went from the UK to Rotterdam, I was always using the cover of my magazine. They were like, what are you in town for? I was like, oh, I got a photo shoot, some random thing. They're like, oh, that's really cool. And they let me through. So it just kept working and working and working and working. I was like, man, just one more time. Because there was part of me that wanted to stop.
Yeah.
It was that greed of money. I was like,
is that easy money?
Just one more time. It's so easy. And I was in France. And then all of a sudden, Everything in my spirit said stop. The tire got on a flat. Something else happened. Something, it was like the universal order was saying stop, and getting louder and louder and louder. And then when I got caught, they were like, so what are you doing here? I was like, oh, I got a photo shoot. And I showed them my magazine. They stop right here. We need an x-ray. We need to look in your car. They opened up the car, and then there was Congo drums. They were like, what's in the Congo drums? And I was like, I had never been through this particular process before. And I was like, oh, this is my friend's car. I'm a musician. So things just weren't adding up.
Yeah.
And then they was like, what's your friend's name? And I was like, shit, D. So I'm just making stuff up. And they x-ray those Congo drums. And as they x-ray the Congo drums, you could see these little bricks. And I'm like, boom. As soon as they saw that, they put the handcuffs on me. I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
Ah! So they had to crack open the Congo drums, and they pulled out these little yellow bricks one by one. And I was like, yo, my life is over. It's literally over. I'm never going to see my daughter again. Wow, my life is over. That's it. Because I'm thinking in terms of like America, where they give you like 50 years, and I'm like, yo, my life is over. So here I am in a holding cell for 5 days. They barely give me any water. I don't get to shower or brush my teeth. They give me one square of sandwich, and they're trying to starve me to get me to confess who I was working for. So I'm looking at surveillance footage of me hanging out with those people. And they were like, this is you. I'm like, no, it's not.
How did they get the surveillance footage?
Because I had been hanging out with those guys at clubs. They had been surveilling those guys for a long time. This was a whole big case. I know.
So were they already expecting you to come across the border?
So this is to answer your question. This is to answer your original question. The theory is, once I got busted, all of the other people at the other stations left their post and came over to mine. I think whenever they left their post, there are so many other people that went through. And here's what's funny. I ended up getting out in 2.5 years, and we're going to get really deep into that story. There's several ways you can get out in 2.5 years. You can be an informant and snitch. You can get out on good behavior, which that's unheard of in a French prison because they just don't do that. Not like that. Or the way that I did it. It is so. Yeah, go ahead.
What's a French prison like? I mean, they have some of the worst prisons in the world. I don't know. They have that show on TV, that documentary. It's like, these are the worst prisons in the world, and they're like in the Philippines and wherever they are. How would you say? I mean, is it like, for example, you don't want to go to jail in Mexico? That's what I've heard, anyways.
Yeah,
I've never been to jail there, but I've heard you don't want to go to jail in Mexico. Is France one of those prisons like in the U.S.?
I will tell you this. Most prisons, they do not want you to rehabilitate. It's part of some other system that's going on. Mm-hmm. When I was in that prison, I felt like they actually cared that I became a better person.
Wow.
Okay. I don't know how I could have got into the one prison where people actually care that you become a better person. And I will tell you this. If it hadn't have been for me being a black man with tattoos at the time I lived in New York, from New York, I can't imagine what would have happened to me. But because I was what they wanted to be, because in their mind, I'm in there for drugs. In their mind, I'm like a gangbanger, whatever. I'm a black man, tattoos, hip hop. So whatever, their whole style of thugging and gangster is patterned after America. So somehow I fucking lucked up and ended up in a prison where they just wanted to be my friend, to say I'm friend with the American gangster. And I played the fucking part all the way. I
Uh-huh.
played the part. Black man, tattoos, coming in from New York, busted for 6 kilos of heroin. Oh my God, he's dangerous. I wasn't fucking dangerous unless you freaking mess with my family, but I acted dangerous while I was in there. And while I was in there, the most gangster people that killed people to get in there, that killed people while they were in there, all they wanted was to be my friend and learn more about America. 56 Snoop Doggy Dogg, Wu-Tang Clan. I'm like, what the? So I ended up in the luckiest situation. I did get into a couple of fights later on, but as far as my overall, it wasn't any different than the life.
Got value from this video. If you heard what you needed to hear, be sure to like it. Comment if you've got a question or you have something to say. Subscribe to the channel. Camelback Recovery provides treatment services for people struggling with mental health, mental illness, addiction, alcoholism, whatever it may be. So if you or a loved one is struggling and you need some guidance and you need some direction, reach out to us. Our contact information is down below, or you can go to our website, camelbackrecovery.com, whether it be detox, inpatient treatment, outpatient treatments, recovery coaching, sober companion services, whatever it may be. Like I said, we can either help you or make sure that you get sent in the right direction. We help people all over the country, all over the world for that matter. I'll see you on the next video.